Okay, so I've now given sort of about 20 minutes overview on the whole sort of notion of getting the Immigration Department's permission to live and work in Hong Kong in your own business. So these are the 10 must-have resources that you will need to go about making this application without paying for any professional help. So I'm going to take you through each of these 10 resources now, because you're going to do your own application. So the first resource on our website is called One-Man Investment Visa for Hong Kong, What's Required. Now, the reason why I call it a one-man investment visa is because invariably entrepreneurs are starting off their applications for this particular visa type and they're only one person. So this resource essentially tells you from 39,000 feet with another level of detail on it again, the kind of stuff that I've just been discussing with you over the preceding few minutes. So you start off by understanding the content of this resource. And then the next thing you do is you pull down this particular resource. It's the visa information document about business investment visas and entrepreneur. The infographic that's the first resource essentially gives you the skeleton. This then puts the flesh on that skeleton in terms of developing your understanding about what's required. And this resource has got lots of embedded links into various aspects of our websites that give you access to screencasts and podcasts and other resources that will allow you to dig deeper into the information that's contained in the visa information document. So you start off with the infographic, and then you research this and click the links on this and understand what that's all about. So then once you've sort of got a general understanding of what's required to get approved in this visa type, you download this resource, which is called the Hong Kong Visa Application Roadmap. And this is a document that's based on, or a resource that's based on, a document that we use internal to my professional practice. So we're 25 people that work in my firm, but I'm basically responsible for bringing all the new clients in. And usually I sit with the clients and I work out the application strategy with the client. But given the size of our practice, I can't do all this work. So I've got to be able to turn around after I've met with a client, and I've got to be able to brief the entire application into my colleagues, who can, in a structured format, who then in turn can immediately pick up on what I've told them, and they're essentially standing in my shoes at that point as regards their understanding of what's required to get this visa type approved. So we repackage that document to make it available to everyone via the web in this document. And basically what it does is it breaks your application planning down into 4 discrete stages. And if you sign up for this, it's completely free. We'll then send you once every day for 4 days a video that's about 10 or 12 minutes long that talks about the discrete 4 steps that you need to traverse in producing what ultimately turns out to be an application plan. So you've now got your understanding from 39,000 feet with the infographic. You've understood what the visa type's all about because of the visa information. You've now addressed your mind to the preparations for the application, which ultimately ends up in a fully completed visa application roadmap, which forms the basis of your next steps into your application, as I'll show you. The fourth resource that is available to you is basically 3 or 4 case examples, case studies of applications that wouldn't get approved. So then you've got something to compare against negatively, so to speak, understanding that the criteria for approval is easily understood, but it's very important, I think, to have access to other experiences that's talk to cases that haven't or wouldn't get approved. So now you've had a chance to sort of understand the negative side of it all. It's time to begin to put your application in motion. So what you do at this point is you go on to our 5th resource, which is essentially all the templates that you need to write up your application to the Immigration Department. So you then take your application plan, and all the contents of the application plan can immediately, with some intellectual input, be imputed into the draft argument for your approval. When you make an application for this type of visa, what you're doing is you're telling a story and you're carrying an argument. You've got to win the day with the Immigration Department. You've got to persuade them that you can make a substantial contribution to the economy of Hong Kong. And these templates, together with the application plan, allow you to go through that exercise. So there are 10 must-have resources. The first 5 you absolutely, should be using. Then these others are resources that I think are completely worthy of your time to take advantage of and see how you can dovetail some of these additional resources into your own planning and then put together what really could be the best possible application that you could make, all things considered. And I'm a liar in actual fact, because the post is called 10 must-have resources. In actual fact, there are 11, but it's not quite as catchy. And once you've basically put everything together and you're ready to go, any questions arising, what you can do is you can use your questions answered section on our website, where you basically email us in, you fill in a form on the web, you write out your question. I will receive that question. I will change the facts and the details to protect your anonymity and your confidentiality. And within 48 hours, I'll give you a podcast response to that particular question. So you then get access to ongoing resources completely free of charge that will allow you to augment your application planning. So that's how you go about making an application for business investment visa in Hong Kong, most particularly how you do it without paying for any professional help. I'm done. Have you got any questions you'd like to ask me?
Can you open a company while still sponsored? Do it as a side company?
Right.
Or still being employed with your current?
So the question here is, can you have an employment visa working for an independent arm's length third-party employer, and at the same time, can you establish a company and then can you start to do a business on the side? Well, the short answer is you can establish the company, but you can't commence trading. In order to commence trading whilst you are holding an employment visa sponsored by somebody else, 2 things must happen. The first is you must disclose to your employer what you're planning to do with your side business and get their consent in writing to say that they have no objection as your sponsor to you joining in that side business. Once you've got that approval, you must then separately go to the immigration department and make an application. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks to complete for specific permissions to join in a side business. It used to be when the immigration department received those applications, they would understand that it was kind of a small start business and they wouldn't have great expectations of it. Fundamentally, as long as it was legally compliant so that it could report for tax purposes, as long as it had some funds available to it, and as long as your employer had no objection to you joining in that side business, those applications were kind of a shoo-in. However, we've since had the Audit Commission report, and now to get permission to join the side business, from a preparations perspective, it's just as onerous as a full investment visa application. Just as onerous. Hi.
Can I start a business without a visa? Just the tourist visa?
Well, when you're in Hong Kong, according to the visa conditions that you have as a visitor, you're not allowed to establish a business or join in a business without the permission of the Director of Immigration. But ultimately, what it boils down to is, has your intention to reside in Hong Kong crystallized? So if you're living outside of Hong Kong and you establish a company and you get a business going and you fly in occasionally to see how the business is going on, see clients and what have you, then the Immigration Department would have no objection to you operating that business if you're in Hong Kong as a visitor, but your intention to reside hasn't crystallized. But if what you've done is you've rented an apartment for 12 months and you've been playing the Shenzhen shuttle and going backwards and forwards to China to get a de facto extension to your visitor visa, in essence what you're doing in those circumstances is breaching your conditions of stay, because your intention to reside is crystallized and you've joined in a business, so you've established a business. So you're vulnerable to prosecution by the Immigration Department in those circumstances, unless you have an active application in the system for this visa type. Because if you've got an active application in the system, what you're doing is you're showing to the Immigration Department that it's your intention to be compliant and that you're not trying to fudge or avoid the issue of getting the correct immigration status. But there's a conundrum here, and the conundrum is this. The conundrum is that you've started the business, you're here as a visitor, your intention to reside is crystallized, you put your application into the Immigration Department. When you're proving to the Immigration Department that you can make a substantial contribution to the economy of Hong Kong, the Immigration Department are going to be asking you to show Well, okay. Have you got an office? Have you started hiring anybody yet? Have you done any trading? What's the situation with the bank account? All of these activities technically mean that you've joined in or you've established a business which is not permitted under the visitor category. By the same token, the Immigration Department is specifically asking for you to prove that you can make a substantial contribution, and the only way you can prove that is by creating those new facts on the ground, and creating those new facts on the ground are a breach of your conditions of stay. So that's called the catch-22. So if you're in the catch-22 situation and you've got an active application in the system, the Immigration Department are very pragmatic. They close their eyes to the breaches of conditions of stay. So if you're in the situation where you're as a visitor and you're operating a business, your intention to reside is crystallized, file an application for this visa type, and your problems in so much as risk of being prosecuted for breach of conditions of stay, those problems go away. If you don't have an active application in the system, the Immigration Department have got no way of imputing what your state of mind is in relation to immigration compliance, and you're vulnerable to prosecution for breach of conditions of stay. Hi.
How does that work with a dependent visa?
With a,
With a dependent?
if you're dependent visa, you're lawfully employable. You can establish your own business. You can join in a business. You can work part-time, full-time, sometime, paid, unpaid. Dependent visa is the ideal status to have in Hong Kong because you don't have to deal with any of this stuff if you've established or joined your own business. So if you've got a dependent visa, yeah, you're on your way.
What is the, I've got a resident visa.
What kind of visa?
Employed, just
An employment visa, yeah.
Not an employment visa. And I'm looking to start my own company. What's
Yeah.
what a usual timeline look like from the time I guess start to create the company
Yeah.
to the time I get that visa accepted?
I always say to clients, expect it's a 90-day process from the day that you've thought about it, if you're an existing resident, to the day that you'll be able to get the permission of the Immigration Department to change your status from sponsored employment through to business investment.
Okay, but I need to first also set up the company, so that's
Yeah.
all right. So that's going to add even more lead time.
How long does it take to incorporate these days?
Plus get the bank account right.
Yeah, that's a problem. Laurent?
To incorporate, 2 days is done.
Yeah, no, that doesn't take a lot of time. Yeah, and while your application is ongoing with the Immigration Department, you'll obviously be hustling to get the bank account open. The Immigration Department know that it takes time these days to get bank accounts open, so they'll cut you some slack on that. But they won't approve you without the evidence of a bank account in the name of your company opened somewhere, if not in Hong Kong.
And if you've left your company but your visa is still valid for 6 months,
Yeah.
that's no problem.
Yeah, so what happens in that case is that you've got an employment visa sponsored by a third-party arm's length employer. That visa type comes with two privileges. On the one hand, you get the privilege to work for that employer doing that job on those terms and conditions that reflect in your employment contract. That's all you can work. That's the only work that you can do. On the other hand, the other privilege that you get is the privilege to reside. The privilege to reside flows naturally from the privilege to work, because you've got to be in Hong Kong to be able to report to work each day. You've got to be living in Hong Kong to be able to report work each day. When you stop working for your employer and sponsor of record, your privilege to work ceases, but your privilege to reside continues until your current limit of stay expires. So in this instance, if you've got 6 months left on your employment visa, but you've stopped working for your employer, you're allowed to reside in Hong Kong, but that's all you're allowed to do. You're allowed to engage in activities preparatory to the commencement of a business, and once you've completed those preparatory activities, you would then file your application to the Immigration Department to change your visa category from sponsored employment through to business investment as an entrepreneur. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah.
What if my business partner is local?
Yeah.
Does it make it any easier for me to apply for this here?
Well, it helps to the extent that you've got a local partner, but it's not definitive. You still have to demonstrate that either the company is going to make a substantial contribution to the economy of Hong Kong if you own 50% of it or less, or if you own more than 50%, you've then got to make you've got to prove that you can make a substantial contribution to the economy of Hong Kong under the investment visa. To the effect that you might have a partner who's been very successful and has got a raft of other businesses, and you can bring that into the mix and you can say this is part of his portfolio and that he's been successful there and he's got additional resources that are going to help to ensure that the business is going to be successful. Yeah, to that extent it's helpful. But just merely having a permanent identity card holder partner on the paperwork doesn't add much value to it all told.
And you said they would be looking for us to make the first hire, the staff hire during the application process.
Well, if you're an entry visa applicant, so if you're a non-resident applicant, what they will do if you're a resident applicant is that they will essentially give you an approval without having any local jobs in play at the point of approval, but they're going to make sure that when your first extension of stay comes up, they're going to review you top to bottom, and you need to have your jobs in play then.